I should have ignored the wallet. That's what I tell myself now, over and over, like it might rewrite what happened next. It was a little after 7:30 p.m., the kind of early winter evening where the air bites just enough to remind you you're still alive, and the streetlights flicker on before the sky fully gives up. I had just finished my shift at a small coffee shop on 8th Avenue. Apron still smelling like burnt espresso and vanilla syrup, feet aching from standing for 8 hours straight. Rent was due in 5 days. My bank account had exactly $112.43 in it. And yet somehow, when I saw the wallet lying near the curb, half hidden beneath a parked black sedan, I didn't think about money first. I thought about whoever lost it. It was leather. Real leather. The kind that feels soft but expensive, like it belongs in a different life than mine. I picked it up, turning it over in my hands, hesitating just long enough for the city noise to fade into the background. There were people walking past me, cars rolling by. No one noticed. No one cared. I could have slipped it into my bag and kept walking. No one would have known. My fingers tightened around it. Just for a second. Then I opened it. There was cash inside. A lot of it. More than I'd seen in months. My stomach twisted. This wasn't a couple of lost bills. This was someone's night ruined. Maybe worse. I checked for an ID. There was one. A name I didn't recognize. No address. Just a business card tucked behind it. Heavy cardstock. Embossed lettering that caught the streetlight. No company logo. Just a name. And a number. Something about it made me pause. It felt deliberate. Like it wasn't meant to be lost. Or found. I swallowed hard, glancing around again like someone might be watching me. That's when the thought hit me, quiet but persistent. This isn't your problem. But it felt like it was. Maybe because everything in my life felt out of control lately. Maybe because doing the right thing was the only thing I still had power over. I closed the wallet, exhaled slowly, and made a decision that would change everything. I walked 3 blocks to the nearest mailbox, then stopped. No, that felt too easy. Too disconnected. If it were me, I'd want it back in my hands. Not floating somewhere in the system. I pulled out my phone and stared at the number on the card. My thumb hovered over the screen. Call or text? I chose text. Hi, I think I found your wallet. The message sat there for a second before I hit send. 3 dots appeared almost instantly. My heart skipped. That shouldn't happen. Not that fast. Then the reply came through. Where are you? No thank you. No confusion. Just that. Direct. Controlled. I hesitated. Something in my chest tightened, like I'd just stepped into something deeper than I understood. I should have stopped right there. I didn't. I told them the coffee shop. I waited. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. I told myself they weren't coming. That I'd drop it off at the police station and be done with it. That's when the black SUV pulled up across the street. It didn't honk. Didn't rush. It just stopped. And somehow, everything around it seemed to slow down. I felt it before I saw him. That shift in the air. The kind that makes people lower their voices without knowing why. The driver stepped out first. Then another man from the passenger side. Both in dark coats. Both scanning the street like they were reading something invisible. And then him. He didn't look around like the others. He looked at me. Directly. Like he already knew. My grip tightened on the wallet. My pulse picked up, loud in my ears. He walked toward me, slow, controlled. Each step measured like it meant something. I should have been scared. Maybe I was. But it wasn't fear that kept me still. It was something else. Something I couldn't name yet. He stopped a few feet away, close enough that I could see the detail in his eyes. Dark, sharp, impossible to ignore. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then his gaze dropped briefly to the wallet in my hand before returning to my face. Do you know what you just returned? He said quietly, his voice calm but heavy with something I felt more than heard. Or who you just saved? The question should have scared me more than it did. Maybe it was the way he said it. Not threatening, not loud, just certain, like the answer already existed and I was the only one who had not caught up yet. I swallowed, my fingers tightening slightly around the wallet as I forced myself to meet his eyes. It is just a wallet, I said, and even to my own ears, it sounded smaller than it should have. Incomplete. His expression did not change, but something behind his gaze shifted, like I had just confirmed something for him. No, he replied quietly, stepping closer, not invading, but close enough that I could feel the warmth from his coat against the cold air. It is never just a wallet. My heart picked up, uneven, my instincts whispering that I had stepped into something I did not understand. The two men behind him remained still, silent, watching everything without appearing to move at all. I became suddenly aware of how exposed I was, standing there in my worn sneakers and thin jacket, holding something that clearly belonged to a world far beyond mine. I was going to turn it in, I added quickly, as if that would somehow make this simpler. I just thought it would be better if I gave it back directly. He studied me for a moment longer, his eyes sharp, searching, not for the wallet, but for something in me. Most people would not, he said. Not a compliment. Not exactly. Just a fact. I hesitated, then extended my hand, offering it to him. Here. For a second, he did not take it. His gaze flicked to my hand, then back to my face, like he was weighing something that had nothing to do with the leather or the cash inside. Then he reached forward and took it, his movements controlled, precise. His fingers brushed mine for the briefest moment, and I felt it. Not pain, not fear, just awareness, like a current passing between 2 points that should not have connected. He opened the wallet without looking away from me, glancing inside just long enough to confirm what he already knew. Then he closed it again. Everything is there, he said. It was not a question. I nodded. I did not take anything. Silence stretched between us, thick and strange, filled with something I could not name. People passed behind him. Cars moved. The city continued like nothing was happening. But right there, in that small space between us, everything felt paused. Then he did something I did not expect. He stepped back, just slightly, enough to create space where there had been none. Emily Carter, he said. My name. The sound of it on his lips made my chest tighten. You made a decision tonight. My breath caught. I just returned something that was not mine. No, he said again, softer this time, but no less certain. You chose not to take something that could have changed your life. I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Because he was right. And the way he said it made it sound like that choice mattered more than I had realized. He slipped the wallet into his coat, his movements smooth, practiced, like this was not the first time he had stood in a situation like this. People like you are rare, he continued, his voice steady, almost thoughtful now. And rare things are noticed. A chill ran down my spine, not from the cold. I was not trying to be noticed, I said, my voice quieter than before. I know, he replied. That was what made it worse. He glanced briefly over his shoulder, a subtle motion, but enough for the men behind him to shift almost imperceptibly. Then his attention returned to me, focused, unwavering. Which is exactly why we are here. My stomach tightened. We. His lips curved just slightly, not quite a smile. You will understand soon enough. The words landed heavier than they should have. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just inevitable. I took a small step back without realizing it, my body reacting before my mind could catch up. Look, I said, trying to ground myself. I gave it back. That is all. I do not need anything. His gaze held mine, steady, unreadable. That is where you are wrong. The streetlight flickered above us, casting shifting shadows across his face, and for the first time since he arrived, I felt it clearly. Not fear. Not yet. Something deeper. Like standing at the edge of something vast, knowing one step forward would change everything. He reached into his coat again, slower this time, deliberate. My breath caught as he pulled out a small object and held it between us, not offering it yet, just letting me see. A simple key. Silver. Unmarked. This, he said quietly, is my offer. I stared at the key like it might explain itself if I waited long enough. It did not. It just sat there between us, catching the streetlight in a way that made it look more important than it should have been. A key. No label. No address. No context. Just a piece of metal that somehow felt heavier than the wallet I had just returned. A key, I said, because it was the only thing that made sense, even if nothing about this did. His gaze did not waver. Yes, that was it. No explanation. No effort to make this easier. My fingers curled slightly at my sides, resisting the strange pull to reach for it. I do not understand, I admitted, my voice quieter now, more careful. He seemed to expect that. You are not supposed to, he replied, calm, controlled, like confusion was part of the process. The air between us shifted again, subtle but undeniable, like the moment before a decision is made, even if you do not realize you are making one. Then explain it, I said, a little sharper than I intended, trying to hold on to something solid. What is this? A reward? Because I gave your wallet back. His expression changed slightly at that. Not offense, not amusement. Something else, something closer to interest. If I wanted to reward you, he said slowly, I would have given you cash. My stomach tightened. He was right. And somehow, that made this worse. Then what is it? I asked again. He took one step closer, just enough that the space between us felt intentional instead of accidental. It is an opportunity, he said. One that most people spend their entire lives waiting for without ever realizing it. I let out a small breath, almost a laugh, except there was nothing funny about this. I was not waiting for anything, I said. I was just trying to get home. Exactly, he replied. That word landed harder than it should have, like he had just confirmed something I had not said out loud. My mind raced, trying to catch up, trying to place this moment somewhere logical, somewhere safe. It did not fit anywhere. What does it open? I asked, nodding toward the key, forcing the conversation back to something tangible. For the first time since he arrived, there was a pause. Not long, just enough to matter. A door, he said finally. I blinked, frustration rising. That does not help. His lips curved again, faint, controlled. It is not supposed to. Of course it was not. Nothing about this was supposed to be easy. The city noise crept back in around us. Distant sirens, footsteps, the hum of traffic, but it all felt muted, like I was standing inside something separate from the rest of the world. And if I say no? I asked. The question felt important. Necessary. His eyes held mine, steady, unreadable, but there was something new there now, something quieter, almost respectful. Then you go home, he said. You forget this ever happened. You go back to your job, your routine, your life. My chest tightened at the way he said life, like it was something small, something already defined. And you? I asked before I could stop myself. What happens to you? A flicker of something crossed his face, gone almost as soon as it appeared. I continue, he said simply. Of course he did. Someone like him always continued. The silence stretched again, but this time it felt different. He was not pushing, not forcing, just waiting. And somehow, that made the choice feel heavier. I looked at the key again, really looked at it this time, trying to see past the metal, past the simplicity, to whatever it represented. A door, an opportunity, a decision. My life as it was. My life as it could be. I thought about the $112.43 in my bank account. The double shifts. The exhaustion that never really went away. I thought about how close I had come to keeping that wallet. How easy it would have been. How different everything might have looked if I had. My throat tightened. Why me? I asked quietly. His answer came without hesitation. Because you did the right thing when it would have been easier not to. The words settled somewhere deep, somewhere I could not ignore. My fingers moved before my mind fully caught up, reaching out slowly, cautiously, until they closed around the cool metal of the key. The moment I touched it, something shifted. Not around me. Inside me. Like a line had been crossed without any clear. Way back. His gaze softened, just slightly, almost imperceptibly, but enough that I noticed. Good, he said quietly. Not satisfied. Not triumphant. Just certain. I swallowed, my grip tightening as I pulled my hand back, the key now mine in a way I did not fully understand. What happens now? I asked. He stepped back, creating space again, but the distance felt different this time. Chosen. Controlled. Now, he said, turning slightly as the men behind him moved in quiet coordination. You decide whether you are brave enough to use it. He left like the moment had already been decided long before I ever picked up that wallet. No rush. No hesitation. Just a quiet exit that somehow felt louder than anything else on that street. The black SUV door closed with a soft, final sound, and within seconds, it pulled away from the curb, disappearing into traffic like it had never been there at all. But I was still standing there, still holding the key. The cold metal pressed into my palm like proof that I had not imagined any of it. I looked down at it again, turning it slightly between my fingers, searching for something I might have missed. A number. A symbol. Anything that would tell me where it belonged. There was nothing. Just smooth silver and silence. You decide whether you are brave enough to use it. His words echoed in my head. Steady. Unhurried. Like they were not meant to fade. I exhaled slowly, the breath visible in the cold air, and for a moment, I just stood there, trying to feel like myself again. Trying to return to something normal. But normal did not feel the same anymore. I slipped the key into my coat pocket, my fingers lingering for a second longer than necessary, as if letting go of it too quickly might undo whatever had just happened. Then I turned and started walking. The city looked the same. The same streetlights. The same traffic. The same people rushing past me without a second glance. But everything felt slightly off, like I was seeing it from a different angle now. Like there was something beneath it all that I had not noticed before. The walk to my apartment took 12 minutes. I knew that because I had timed it once, back when every minute mattered. Tonight, it felt shorter. Or maybe I was just not paying attention. My mind kept replaying the moment over and over again. The way he looked at me. The way he said my name. The key. Always the key. By the time I reached my building, my chest felt tight with something I could not quite name. Anticipation. Maybe. Or regret. I pushed open the front door, the familiar creak of the hinges grounding me just enough to remind me where I was. This was my life. A narrow hallway that smelled faintly like old paint and laundry detergent. Flickering overhead lights that no one ever bothered to fix. The kind of place where nothing unexpected ever happened. I climbed the stairs slowly, my hand trailing along the chipped railing, each step bringing me closer to the small space I had called home for the past 2 years. Apartment 3B. I stopped in front of the door, my keys already in my hand, ready to unlock it the same way I had every night. Routine. Safe. Predictable. I hesitated. Just for a second. Then I shook my head slightly, pushing the thought away, and unlocked the door. Inside, everything was exactly as I left it. A small living area with a worn couch, a coffee table with a single stack of unopened mail, a kitchenette that barely fit 2 people side by side. My world. Simple. Limited. Mine. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me, the soft click echoing louder than it should have. I leaned back against it for a moment, closing my eyes, letting the quiet settle around me. This was where I belonged. This was what I understood. But my hand moved anyway, almost without thinking, slipping into my coat pocket, wrapping around the key again. I pulled it out slowly, holding it up in the dim light of the room. It looked the same. It felt the same. But something about it had changed. Or maybe I had. It is just a door, I whispered to myself, the words sounding hollow the second they left my mouth. Because I knew that was not true. Not anymore. I pushed myself off the door and walked toward the small desk by the window, setting my bag down, my movements slower now, more deliberate. The city lights flickered outside, reflecting faintly against the glass. Distant and unreachable. I stared at the key for a long moment, my thoughts pulling in 2 directions at once. Stay? Or step forward? Safe? Or unknown? My fingers tightened slightly. Then, almost before I could stop myself, I turned the key over in my hand and noticed something I had not seen before. A tiny engraving. So small I had missed it under the streetlight. A single number. 27. My breath caught. That was new. Or maybe it had always been there, waiting for me to actually look. Waiting for me to choose. I stared at it, my pulse picking up again. That same feeling from earlier rising in my chest, stronger now, clearer. This was not over. It had never been over. I closed my hand around the key again, tighter this time, and for the first time since he left, I realized something that made my stomach drop. I was not wondering if I should use it anymore. I was wondering where it would take me. I did not sleep that night. I told myself I would. I even turned off the lights, laid down on the couch because the bed felt too far away, too final somehow, and closed my eyes like that might force everything back into place. It did not. Every time I drifted, I saw the key again, felt the weight of it in my hand, heard his voice, calm and certain, like he had already seen the outcome and was just waiting for me to catch up. By 2:13 a.m., I gave up pretending. I sat up, the apartment quiet around me, the kind of silence that makes every small movement feel louder than it should be. The city outside never really slept, but up here, behind thin walls and flickering lights, it felt distant, removed, like I was already somewhere else. My fingers found the key again on the table where I had set it down hours earlier. I picked it up slowly, turning it between my thumb and index finger, staring at the tiny engraving. 27. It was not an address. Not by itself. But it was something. A clue. A direction. I stood up before I could talk myself out of it. That was the part that surprised me the most. Not the decision itself, but how quickly it came once I stopped overthinking it. I grabbed my coat, slipped on my shoes, and headed for the door. No plan. No real explanation. Just a feeling I could not ignore anymore. The hallway was colder than my apartment, the overhead light flickering again like it always did, but tonight it felt sharper, clearer, like every detail mattered. I moved faster than usual down the stairs, my footsteps echoing softly against the concrete. When I stepped outside, the air hit me harder than before, crisp and awake, like the city had been waiting. I paused on the sidewalk for a moment, my breath visible in the cold, my mind finally catching up to what I was doing. Where are you even going? The question was valid, necessary, and completely unanswerable. I looked down at the key again, frustration flickering through me. 27, I murmured under my breath. It had to mean something. It had to point somewhere. That was when I noticed it. Not the key. The street sign. Right across from my building. West 27th Street. My breath caught, sudden and sharp, like the world had just shifted half an inch to the left. That could not be a coincidence. Or maybe it could, but it did not feel like one. Not after everything else. I turned slowly, scanning the street like I was seeing it for the first time. It was quieter here at this hour, fewer cars, fewer people, just the low hum of the city settling into the night. Most of the buildings looked the same. Old brick, narrow entrances, nothing that stood out. Until something did. Halfway down the block, there was a building that did not match the others. Taller, cleaner, the kind of place you noticed without knowing why. The lights inside were on, but muted, soft, like they were meant to be seen without drawing attention. My pulse picked up again, steady and insistent. This is nothing. You are reading too much into this. But my feet were already moving. One step, then another. Each one felt heavier than the last, like I was crossing some invisible line with every inch forward. By the time I reached the entrance, my heart was beating loud enough that I could feel it in my throat. The door was simple. Dark glass. No sign. No name. Just a keypad beside it, and a handle that looked untouched. Like it did not get used by just anyone. I hesitated, my hand hovering just inches away from the surface. This was the moment. The one where I could still turn around. Walk back. Forget all of this. Go back to my small apartment, my routine, my life. Safe. Predictable. Mine. I tightened my grip on the key, the cool metal grounding me just enough to make a decision. Slowly, carefully, I brought it up and slid it into the lock. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. My breath hitched as I turned it, the mechanism inside clicking softly, almost quietly enough to miss if you were not listening for it. The door unlocked. I did not move right away. I just stood there, my hand still on the handle, the realization settling in deeper than before. This was real. Whatever this was, it was real. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The door closed behind me with a soft click that sounded louder than it should have, like it sealed something I could not undo. The air inside was warmer, but not in a comforting way. Controlled. Precise. Like every degree had been chosen on purpose. I stood just inside the entrance, my eyes adjusting slowly to the dim, ambient lighting. The space was nothing like I expected. No clutter. No signs. No obvious purpose. Just clean lines, polished floors, and walls that looked too smooth to belong to a place that did not advertise what it was. It felt expensive without trying to prove it. Quiet without feeling empty. Intentional. I took a cautious step forward, the sound of my shoes barely making a noise against the floor. My reflection flickered faintly in the glass panels along the hallway, reminding me how out of place I looked. Worn coat. Tired eyes. A girl who had no business being here. You came. His voice cut through the silence before I even saw him. Calm. Steady. Exactly the same as before. I turned quickly, my breath catching for half a second as I found him standing at the far end of the hallway, like he had been there the entire time. Waiting. Of course he had been. Adrian Volkov did not look surprised. Not even a little. He just watched me, his posture relaxed but controlled, like every movement had already been decided. You knew. I would, I said, and the words came out more certain than I felt. His gaze sharpened slightly, like that answer mattered more than I realized. I knew you would consider it, he corrected. Most people hesitate longer. I glanced down at the key still in my hand, then back up at him. Most people do not get handed a mystery in the middle of the street, I replied. Something close to approval flickered in his expression, gone almost instantly. And yet you are here. He stepped closer, not fast, not slow, just enough to close the distance in a way that felt deliberate. The same quiet gravity surrounded him. The same sense that everything around him adjusted without being asked. I felt it again, that shift in the air, subtle but undeniable. "What is this place?" I asked, my voice lower now, more careful. He stopped a few feet away, close enough to make it clear this was not an accident. "A door," he said. I exhaled, a small breath of frustration escaping before I could stop it. "You already said that. And you still walked through it," he replied. That stopped me. Because he was right. Again. I looked around more carefully this time, noticing the details I had missed before. The way the lights were placed just out of direct view. The absence of anything unnecessary. No decorations. No distractions. Just structure. Purpose. "This is not just a building," I said slowly, piecing it together out loud. "It is something else." His eyes held mine, steady, assessing. "It is a beginning," he said. The words settled into the space between us, heavier than it should have been. Beginning. Not place. Not location. Something bigger. Something that implied change. My fingers tightened slightly around the key, even though I had already used it. "You still have not told me what you want from me," I said. There it was. The question that had been building since the moment he stepped out of that SUV. He did not answer right away. Instead, he studied me again, like he was measuring something I could not see. Not my clothes. Not my fear. Something deeper. Then, finally, he spoke. "I do not want anything from you," he said calmly. "I am offering you something." I let out a quiet breath, shaking my head slightly. "That sounds like the same thing." "It is not," he replied. "Wanting creates obligation. Offering creates choice." Choice. The word echoed in my mind, clashing with everything about this situation that felt anything but optional. I took a step closer without realizing it, drawn in despite myself. "And what exactly am I choosing?" I asked. His gaze softened just slightly, not warmth, not kindness, but something close to clarity. "A different life," he said. Simple, direct, final. My heart skipped, just once, sharp and undeniable. "You do not even know me," I said, my voice quieter now, less defensive, more uncertain. His lips curved faintly, not quite a smile, but close enough to matter. "I know enough," he replied. The confidence in his voice was not arrogance. It was certainty, the kind that made arguments feel smaller before they even formed. I hesitated, my thoughts pulling in different directions again, but this time it felt stronger, realer. "And if I walk out right now?" I asked. His answer came immediately. "Then the door will still open tomorrow," he said. No pressure, no urgency, just inevitability. I stared at him, trying to find the edge of this situation, the limit, the point where it stopped making sense. I could not find it, because there was none. He took one final step closer, close enough that I could feel the weight of his presence without him touching me. "But if you stay," he added quietly, his voice dropping just enough to make every word land deeper, "you will start to understand why you were meant to find that wallet in the first place." My breath caught, not because of the words, but because part of me believed him. Something inside me shifted the moment he said it, quiet but irreversible, like a door opening somewhere I could not see but could suddenly feel. I should have walked away. Every logical part of me knew that. This was not normal. This was not safe in the way my life had always defined safety. And yet I did not move. I stood there, a few feet from him, holding on to a decision that no longer felt like a decision at all. "You talk like this was planned," I said slowly, searching his face for something that would ground me, something that would make this smaller, like I was supposed to find it. His expression did not change, but his eyes sharpened slightly, like I had stepped closer to the right question. "Some things are not planned," he said. "They are recognized." The words settled into me, unsettling in a way I could not explain. Recognized. Not created. Not forced. Just seen. I shook my head slightly, trying to push back against the pull of it. "That does not make sense." "It does not have to," he replied. "Not yet." That again. Not yet. Like there was more waiting on the other side of something I had not fully stepped into. My fingers loosened slightly around the key, even though I no longer needed it, and I let my hand fall to my side. "So what happens now?" I asked, the question coming out softer this time, less defensive, more real. He did not answer right away. Instead, he turned slightly and gestured down the hallway behind him. A simple motion, but it carried weight. Invitation, direction, expectation. I hesitated for half a second, then followed. Of course I did. The hallway opened into a larger space, and the shift was immediate. The ceilings were higher here, the lighting warmer, but still controlled, still intentional. There were people. Not many. Maybe 4 or 5, spread across the room, each one focused on something different. A laptop, a set of documents, a quiet conversation that stopped the moment we entered. I felt it instantly. The way the room adjusted. The way attention shifted, subtle but complete. Not to me. To him. Every movement paused just slightly, like they were acknowledging his presence without needing to say it out loud. Authority without noise. Power without display. It was different from anything I had ever experienced. This is where you start to understand, he said quietly, stopping near the center of the room. I looked around, taking in the details more carefully now. Everything here had purpose. Nothing felt random. Even the silence felt structured. Understand what? I asked. My voice sounded smaller in the space than I expected. He turned to face me again, his gaze steady, measuring, like he was deciding how much to show me and how fast. That the world you know is only one version of it, he said. And it is not the one that shapes outcomes. My breath caught slightly, not because of the words themselves, but because of how easily he said them. Like this was not philosophy. It was fact. And this place does? I asked. He held my gaze for a moment longer, then nodded once. This place influences what others think is chance. Chance. The word echoed differently now, like it had layers I had never considered before. I glanced back at the people in the room, noticing the way they moved, the way they carried themselves. Focused, controlled, not rushed, not uncertain, like they all knew exactly why they were here. Like they belonged. Unlike me. And you think I belong here? I asked quietly. The question felt heavier than anything else I had said so far. More honest. More dangerous. He did not hesitate. I do not think, he said. I observe. That answer hit harder than it should have. Because it removed doubt. Removed opinion. It made this feel decided. I exhaled slowly, my chest tightening again, but not with fear. Not exactly. Something else. Something closer to realization. I am not like them, I said, almost to myself. No, he agreed. My head snapped up slightly at how easily he said it. But there was no dismissal in his tone. No rejection. Just acknowledgement. You are not, he repeated. And that is precisely why you are here. The room felt quieter somehow, even though nothing had changed. My thoughts slowed, not because I had answers, but because the questions were starting to shift. I looked at him, really looked this time, past the control, past the certainty, searching for something human beneath it all. And what happens if I stay? I asked. He stepped closer again, not enough to crowd me, just enough to make the space between us feel intentional. Then you learn how much of your life has been decided by people you have never met, he said quietly. A pause, just long enough to matter. And whether you are willing to become one of them. I felt the weight of his words settle somewhere deeper than logic, somewhere that did not argue or resist, but simply understood. Not fully, not clearly, but enough to know that walking away now would not return me to who I was before. It would only leave me wondering what I had just turned my back on. My eyes drifted across the room again, slower this time, more intentional. The people here were not just working. They were aware. Every movement measured, every glance purposeful, like they were all part of something larger that did not need to be explained out loud. And for the first time, I noticed something else. They were not watching me with curiosity. They were watching me with recognition. Like I had already crossed a line they understood better than I did. You are all so certain, I said quietly, more to myself than to him. Like none of this is a question. Adrian did not look surprised. Certainty comes from seeing patterns others ignore, he replied. Once you see them, it becomes difficult to pretend they are not there. I let that sink in, my mind trying to grasp what that meant in a real sense, not just in the way he said it. Patterns, decisions, influence. It all sounded abstract until I remembered something simple. My rent, my job, the way my schedule changed without warning, the way opportunities never quite reached me, no matter how hard I worked. Small things, random things, or at least that is what I had always believed. You were saying my life has not been random, I said slowly. He met my gaze without hesitation. I am saying very little is. My chest tightened again, not with fear, but with something sharper. Awareness. The kind that makes everything before it feel incomplete. I shook my head slightly, trying to push against it. That sounds like control. It is influence, he corrected. Control is obvious. Influence is invisible. The distinction lingered, heavier than I expected. Invisible. That was the part that unsettled me. Not because it sounded powerful, but because it sounded familiar in a way I had never questioned before. I took a small step forward, closing some of the distance between us without thinking. And you want me to learn that? I said. It was not really a question anymore. He studied me for a moment, then nodded once. I want you to see it, he said. Learning is your choice. Choice. That word again. It kept appearing in a place where everything felt predetermined. I let out a slow breath, my thoughts finally beginning to settle into something clearer. Not answers, but direction. And what if I see it, and I do not like it? I asked. His expression did not change, but there was something steadier in his gaze now. Then you walk away with knowledge most people never have, he said. And you decide what to do with it. No threat, no pressure, just a path that existed whether I took it or not. I looked down at my hands, noticing they were no longer trembling. At some point, the uncertainty had shifted into something else. Not confidence. Not yet, but something closer to readiness. I lifted my head again, meeting his eyes fully this time. What is the first step? I asked. The room seemed to hold its breath for half a second, subtle but real, like the question mattered more than anything I had said before. Adrian did not smile. He did not react outwardly at all. But something in the way he stood, the way his shoulders settled just slightly, told me everything I needed to know. This was the moment he had been waiting for. He turned, gesturing toward a long table near the far side of the room. It was simple, clean. On it sat a single folder. Nothing else. No clutter. No distraction. Just one object placed exactly where it needed to be. You start by looking, he said. I followed his gaze, my steps slower now, more deliberate with each movement. The distance to the table was not far, maybe 15 feet, but it felt longer, like each step carried weight I could not yet define. When I reached it, I stopped, my eyes fixed on the folder. Plain, unmarked. But somehow, it felt heavier than the key had. I hesitated, my hand hovering just above it. This felt different. The key had opened a door. This would open something else entirely. Something inside me shifted again, quieter this time, but stronger. I reached forward and placed my hand on the folder, feeling the smooth surface beneath my fingers. Behind me, I could feel his presence without turning, steady, unchanging, like he already knew what I would do next. I took a breath. Then I opened it. The moment the folder opened, the room seemed to fade just enough for the contents to take over everything else. Not dramatically, not all at once. Just enough that my focus narrowed, like my mind understood before I did that this mattered. The first page was simple. Too simple. White paper. Black text. Clean. Precise. At the top was my name. Emily Carter. Seeing it there, printed so deliberately, made something in my chest tighten. Not because it was unexpected, but because it meant this had started long before I stepped through that door. My eyes moved down the page slowly, each line pulling me deeper into something I could not pretend was coincidence anymore. My address. My job. My work schedule for the past 6 months. Details I had never written down anywhere. Details I barely kept track of myself. A quiet realization settled in, heavier with every word. I had not been invited into this world. I had been observed. I flipped the page, my fingers steady now, almost too steady. The next section was different. Not facts. Patterns. Charts. Notes. Connections drawn between moments I had never linked together. Late shifts that had been switched last minute. Customers who had come in on specific days. Tips that were higher on certain nights. It all looked random when you lived it. But here, on paper, it formed something else. Something intentional. My breath slowed as the understanding began to take shape. This is my life, I said quietly, not looking back at him. This is how your life has been shaped, Adrian corrected from behind me, his voice calm, measured, like he had said this before. I swallowed, my eyes scanning the page again, this time differently. Not as someone reading about herself, but as someone seeing the structure behind it. The influence. The invisible decisions that had guided outcomes I thought were mine. I turned another page. This one was different again. Fewer notes. More blank space. At the top, a single line. Potential trajectory. My fingers paused on the edge of the paper. Trajectory. Not past. Not present. Future. My chest tightened, A different kind of tension now, one that felt sharper, more focused. I read the first option. Continue current path. The description beneath it was brief. Predictable. Limited growth. Increasing financial strain. It was not cruel. It was accurate. That was what made it harder to ignore. The second option was different. Altered variables. New environment. Accelerated exposure to decision structures. The language was unfamiliar, but the meaning was not. Change. Not random. Not hopeful. Directed. My throat felt dry as I turned the final page. This one had almost nothing on it. Just a single sentence, centered, deliberate. Subject demonstrates consistent ethical deviation from opportunistic norms. I blinked, reading it again, slower this time. Ethical deviation. That was how they described it. Not kindness. Not honesty. A deviation. Something that stood out because it was rare. I let out a quiet breath, closing the folder slowly, my hand resting on top of it as the weight of everything settled in fully for the first time. The room came back into focus around me, but it did not feel the same anymore. Nothing did. I turned, finally looking at him again. Really looking. You knew, I said. It was not a question. His gaze met mine, steady, unshaken. I suspected, he replied. You confirmed it. I nodded slightly, the motion small but certain. The girl who had picked up that wallet felt further away now. Not gone. Just changed. So this is what you do, I said. You watch people. You map them. You decide what they could become. His expression did not shift, but there was something clearer in his eyes now. I recognize potential, he said. And I offer it direction. Direction. That word again. I looked down at the folder one last time, then back at him, the pieces finally aligning into something I could not ignore anymore. This was not about the wallet. It never was. That had just been the moment that revealed something already in motion. I took a slow breath, feeling the weight of the choice in a way that was no longer overwhelming. Just real. And if I accept this, I said quietly, I do not go back. He held my gaze, not forcing, not persuading, just present. No, he said. The honesty in that single word settled deeper than anything else he had said so far. I exhaled, my shoulders lowering slightly as the last of the hesitation faded into something steadier. Not certainty, not completely, but enough. My hand moved from the folder, not pushing it away, not holding on to it, just letting it rest where it was. Then I stepped forward, closing the space between us by a few inches, my voice calm, clear, and finally aligned with the decision I had already made somewhere along the way. Then I want to learn how to see what you see.